my proposal is, or the facts proposal is, that citizens-initiated referenda should have a 5% threshold like multi-wards, and they should allow digital signatures like parliamentary petitions. And I've got one extra point that I haven't raised in my submission that I just thought about, but it is increasingly difficult in society to, I guess, confront controversial issues in person. There's a lot of violence risk. So that's another reason why I think electronic methods are superior. There's some controversial topics. If you tried to run physical petitions in a mall or at a show, that would be quite dangerous to run. So I think that leaves only an electronic method. We have 60 multi-ward referendums happening by the end of next year. There will have been 60 in total. The Swiss system has 60 referendums for their people every year. There are 60 questions across 4 referendums. We haven't had a citizens-initiated referendum since 2012. So the democratic system is failing us. And no government-initiated referendums have happened since 2020. So in the absence of us being able to do citizens-initiated, we haven't got government and parliament putting forward referendums for us. So we just don't have a strong democratic voice between elections. There's also a lot of vagary in the Citizens-Initiated Referenda Act. The Office of the Clerk has said it's ambiguous whether electronic forms are allowed, and he won't rule on it. He would prefer a legislative change. So that's kind of the summary of, I guess, my submission, and that additional point around the safety risk of trying to gather 369,000 signatures in person. There's a lot of topics I just would not want to be trying to confront the public on because of the violence risk. So that's me. I'll hand it over to questions. Hopefully there's some.
Okay, members, questions for Jen? Oh, Jen.
Hey, Geoff, it's James B here. Thanks. Good to see you again. You're probably not used to committees running earlier on time because you submit to Justice very often, and obviously I need to learn a thing or two about chairing from Mr. Urafe. I have some questions about your views on referenda and it being an integral part of the democratic process. And I put this to the submitter before, and I appreciate you may not have caught that point, but don't we elect representatives for a reason to go and make decisions on our behalf? And I understand there is a significant amount of time between elections, but we do at some point have to put enough, delegate enough that decision-making responsibility to them to make decisions on important issues. And if we as legislators or decision makers or governors get it wrong, then the public have the chance to express their dissatisfaction at the election by voting those representatives out. And at the risk of putting in too much, well, I don't know if there's such thing as too much, but direct participation or change in the kind of democratic makeup. And it goes to your point around trying to get citizens-initiated referenda together and the risk of going out there and gathering submissions on quite heated or controversial issues and the safety risk. Doesn't that help demonstrate that point, that we then delegate that decision-making responsibility to elected representatives to make those decisions and take the heat on our behalf?
It's a great question, and I understand where it's coming from. I would argue that most voters are pretty shallow voters and they don't look into policy for the parties when they vote, or don't look into MPs. A lot of it's based on feeling. There's not many voters out there that go as deep as I do and read everyone's policies and pick them apart. So that's my first point. The second one is, I'll be honest, I do not think that all politicians are always representative of the people. And I'm going to pick on a few parties here with my examples. But if we look at the Labour-led government from 2020 to 2023, tried to merge TVNZ and Radio New Zealand, polling was showing 80% of people opposed it. There was a movement to try and reduce the voting age, and polling showed 80% of Kiwis opposed it. The mandatory income insurance, 80% of people opposed it. So that wasn't representative of the people. And then if I turn it back on your party, James, if we look at the Treaty Principles Bill, polling has shown 2-to-1 Kiwis support it, but we've not got politicians reflecting that view, and we certainly don't have media reflecting that view. So I would say on behalf of most voters, no, we do not trust elected representatives to accurately represent our wishes. Final point there is, if we go back to the 2020 referendums, I think that the cannabis referendum, very close, I think it was 52% for 48, really important, just got, I guess the no's just won it. And then The end of life choice bill, pretty comprehensive, 2-1, 67%, I think, preferred it. So I think it's a great example of why referendums work and why we can't rely solely on elected representatives.
I have a sup on that. I just want to pick up on.
Yeah, sure.
So just one point you made, Geoff, and I think it's a reasonable point. You said that a lot of voters, or some voters, or most voters, maybe I can't remember how you characterised it, are shallow and don't look into policies. And I would agree. I wouldn't use that term, but I think a lot of voters are busy running their own lives and having things to worry about that they don't get time or they don't concern themselves with it. But wouldn't that lend weight to the point that we shouldn't govern by referenda, because it's asking people to go and make a decision on a specific topic or issue that they haven't given much thought to. And actually, we've elected 120 odd people whose job it is to sit there and quite carefully, and so you might think that some of us don't give it careful consideration, which is maybe fair criticism, but eventually we are asked to carefully consider a topic and make a call on the public's behalf. Do you have any comments to make on that? And then I'll close off.
Yeah, two thoughts, two examples, I suppose, which help to answer it. I think to support your argument, which is not what I'm here for, but if you look at Brexit, that was a great example of it shouldn't have gone to referendum so fast. It was very complex, and even the experts didn't understand the implications. And so that's a great example of where referendums don't work. I agree. You need discourse, and sometimes something might just be so hard, the common voter we should not have a vote on it. And I think my second point is, if you look at the Hikoi in recent days, and you look at those who did interviews of the people on the Hikoi, it is very clear that the level of knowledge of what was happening was very low. Most of them that got interviewed that I've seen hadn't read the bill, and hardly any knew that National and New Zealand First had already very clearly stated that they will not be passing at the next reading. So there's a great example of readers not being, I guess, I've got a foot in both camps there. Sometimes referendums don't work, but also voters are not informed enough to elect representatives accurately.
I think they're valid points. No, I tend to agree with a lot of that too. Thanks, Geoff.
Thank you.
Would that be true of the people that support the bill as well?
Can you just elaborate, please, on that point?
Well, you've said that those who are against the
I see what you're saying. Oh, totally. And now I might mess up this word, but if you look at Tino Rangatiratanga, for example, how many Kiwis understand what that means? And going back to the start of the treaty. So it's a very valid point, is that we do need to have some discourse around that. And like current polling is showing 2-1 Kiwis support the Treaty Principles Bill, right? So that's a classic example, because it is, the bill says it should go to referendum. Should it go to referendum? It's a great debating point. I would say that's tackling quite a complex thing. I think if you go back, there's some, and I'll use the Brexit example, if there's a scale, the Brexit example is at the extreme end of complex. Probably, maybe treaty is up there, the Treaty Principles Bill, maybe that's up there, or maybe actually it's not. But there's simpler things like, if we go back to cannabis, or if we go back to end of life choice, they were probably simpler concepts for people to get their heads around.
Well, the end of life choice.
I would, yeah. Thank you, Geoff. I just make, on the cannabis, so there was no legislation that people were having a chance to vote on, which did increase the complication quite a bit. But my question actually is about the risk that people pose trying to collect signatures. Do you think that there is actually a benefit in people getting out in front of each other and making a case and having discourse face to face and collecting signatures for a petition, as opposed to just collecting it online and not having that discourse, leading into people becoming more knowledgeable of the issue which they're actually talking about?
Yeah, and you're talking to someone who does focus group research, right? So I hold this for my clients, and I get people in a room to discuss these things. So that is a valid point, and I'm a big supporter. I believe everyone running to be an MP should run an electorate and should face the people. And I don't believe in parties setting party lists. I think it should be based partially on what the people of votes from the people. So I do hear what you're saying with that argument.
Sorry, I was clear that mine was actually about the referendum signature.
Oh, no, totally. I hear you, but I guess I'm using that as an analogy of, I guess, being representative of the people, getting out there at the coalface, talking to people.
Which means you'd be more in favour of collecting written signatures than electronic signatures.
A physical signature is worth more than an electronic signature. Yes. Okay. And But, you know, I guess we live in 2024, and one of the points of my submission was, if it's 10% of voters, which I think is 369,000, maybe it's 366, I can't remember, that is a hell of a lot. And in a digital age, maybe 2012, doing an asset sales referendum, a petition, a citizens initiated referendum, petition to try and get to the referendum, and you've got, you know, union backing, you can use their databases, maybe you can get to 280,000 or whatever it is at the time. But now 369,000 in 2024, it's almost impossible. And I'd say that, to use another example, if you look at the Green Party and their ban conversion therapy petition, they've got 160,000 signatures. They got 20,000 in one day at Big Gay Out. Now, that's a very friendly environment for that bill where there wasn't much threat. But if you're going to go out and try and do a referendum on abortion or Māori seats, for example, you're probably going to get beaten up in today's climate. So how can a citizen put these concepts forward, even if they're supported by the majority of people? And they were just examples, not things I'm saying I support, but just, I guess, controversial topics. How can we possibly go out there and capture 370,000 signatures safely?
Any other questions? No, we don't have any other questions for you, but thank you again for the detailed information that you've given us. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And just to go back to my first point, if you haven't got it and you do want it, I've done comprehensive research with the clerk on all of the citizens initiated referendums since the Act was passed. And it's happy to share it. You can use it however you please. I've got the same information from Māori wards too, so if anyone wants that, and that's not been published either.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nice.